Hello, and welcome back to the Sober Connection podcast with me, your host, Abi King. We've got a slightly different episode today. Normally, we have people talking about their sobriety journeys and where they're at with their lives now that alcohol isn't an issue anymore. But today, I'm joined by a lady who works as a midlife mentor. She specializes in helping women navigate the peri and menopausal stages of life. We're going to explore what actually happens to our bodies during this time. We're going to look at how alcohol can amplify certain symptoms, and we're going to talk about why reducing or removing alcohol might just be one of the most empowering choices that you can make for your long-term health. So my guest today is Meegan Cares. Hi Meegan, how are you?
Hi, Abby. I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for
Good.
inviting me on.
Oh, no, thank you for agreeing to come on. It's a topic that I think will resonate with a lot of females, certainly, and possibly their husbands too. So, yeah, it's always good to have a bit of a knowledgeable chat. So I
Yeah,
just
cool.
wondered if you could tell us, firstly, just a little bit about your work as a midlife mentor and what led you to focus on peri and menopause.
Yep, so I have been a counsellor for 25 plus years, longer than that, but around 25 years. And I had my own journey with Crohn's disease when I was in my 20s. So that was sort of out of the ordinary of, a life experience in my 20s. I had to go through a whole many layered and many yeared process with that. And that led me into looking at my own psychology and well-being and how my body connects with that, and eventually studying psychosynthesis counselling. And I've been a counsellor and a craniosacral therapist since then. And then, so fast forward a couple of decades, and at the very, I think, early age of 41, I was already postmenopausal, and that came as a massive shock to me. And none of my friends were going through perimenopause even at that stage. So I was very much um, learning as I went and by myself in it. And of course, we hadn't really. So I'm 55 in a few weeks. So that was a while ago now. And we really hadn't opened up the conversation about perimenopause and menopause then.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of research, first of all, for my own benefit. And then as my clients started going through their own perimenopause and menopause journey, I just learned more and more about it. And really how the perimenopausal stage and early postmenopause can really pull the rug out from under us in terms of our psychological and physical health and well-being. And so over the last number of years, I've focused particularly on supporting women in perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause. I am also a general counsellor, but this is my passion.
Hmm.
Of course, as we go through something in our own life, it really prompts us to want to support others going through their journey. So, anything I talk about has to be taken in that context. I'm not a medical doctor nor a naturopath. My specialty is mental health and well-being,
Hmm.
particularly for women in menopause and midlife.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. No, I think it's definitely. Yeah, you're right. When you're going through something yourself, I know for me, when I was going through my quitting alcohol journey, I sort of became more aware of certain times of the month I would black out more often, which was weird because I was a daily drinker and I would just pretty much drink the same amount every single day. But sometimes I would not remember going to bed, and then other times I'd be fine. And I just kind of thought that that was maybe an effect of the alcohol on my hormones and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely something that you look into. But how do you see alcohol showing up in the lives of the women that you are mentoring at this stage?
Yeah, so it is really interesting when you kind of look at the arc of our life, and like you said, at certain stages of your menstrual cycle, alcohol would affect your body differently. So when we come into perimenopause, we shift out of that for many of us, and of course this is a generalization, but for many of us prior to perimenopause, we have a fairly regular menstrual cycle and pattern, and so we can get to understand ourselves over those few decades.
Hmm.
And then perimenopause arrives and everything just gets so mixed up, is all over the place. your hormones are flying up and down, as well as a decline, and we can talk about that some more later. And so then what happens is how alcohol used to react and behave in my system, or how I used to respond to alcohol, how my body could tolerate it, is no longer the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of see for women, and also for myself, where I might have had, say, a drink or a glass of wine. When I was going through perimenopause, I could not predict what would happen. I might feel really relaxed and that was nice and we were done. Or I might get so tired, hot, scratchy, and need to fall asleep straight away.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to understand what was happening. And so what I see for women is where we might have leaned on alcohol for many things, as we do. We have an understanding about that in our culture. When perimenopause comes along and you've got all the changes going on in your body, alcohol is this added kind of burden, and it might give you a short-term relaxation or easing up of stress, but there's a really big cost that comes along with it, a really big rebound, and we'll talk about that some more as we go through. And it makes it very problematic. And so what I see for women is that because of what's happening with our hormones, our response to stress and our resilience towards stress is actually lowered in perimenopause, and that has been researched.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if I was a woman that might have a glass of wine in the evening to relax, well, what happens now in perimenopause is that there's this whole cascade of shitty symptoms that are kicked off by that glass of wine. Or if my stress is higher because my tolerance to stress is lower in perimenopause, then I might have a few more glasses of wine to try and do, to cause that relaxation, which would have worked in the past. But because of what's going on in your body during perimenopause, it doesn't work the same way. And so it creates far more havoc than it used to. The other thing I'll speak to is that there's a lot of psychological, mental, emotional effects that perimenopause has. And so if, as we have been socialized to turn towards alcohol to sort of take the edge off in that regard, right, we might lean on that a little more. But like I said, it's not reacting in the same way with our body. Our body's not tolerating it in the same way. So it actually makes the symptoms and the situation worse. And so what I see for some women is that there becomes an increasingly harmful cycle with alcohol during perimenopause because we just don't understand what's happening with our body, and we're trying to behave in the same way that we did 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So short answer is it becomes far more problematic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Why do
For
you
many.
why do you think so many women in midlife turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism?
Well, I think we're really socialized to that alcohol's okay. I'm a New Zealander, and I grew up in a culture where getting really drunk on the weekend is par for the course. That's just what people did. I sort of stepped out of that way of being in my 20s because I was very unwell with Crohn's disease, and I just couldn't. I couldn't drink. And,
Yeah.
I'd had many years of binge drinking prior to that because it was just such a normal thing to do in our culture and society. Things have changed over the decades, but it's still there. I think in midlife, in that perimenopausal time, it's a very it can become quite a sort of what is the word? It's a sandwich kind of time. If you've got children, maybe your children are getting older, they're becoming teenagers, and all the challenges that go with that. You've got parents that are aging, that are maybe becoming more reliant or have more needs, or the relationships become more difficult. And alcohol is just one of those things in our culture, in our society, where it's very normalized
Hmm.
for us to turn to that for relief, for enjoyment, for connection, right?
Yeah.
So if if my response to life, if I'm feeling more stressed, if I'm feeling more done in by life, if I'm feeling more burdened, then it's very natural just to turn to that thing that we've been very conditioned to turn towards. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah. Can you explain what's happening hormonally during peri and menopause, and how alcohol kind of interacts with those changes?
Yeah, so I'll give it a broad overview, right?
Yeah,
Not being a
sure.
medical doctor, okay?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
but in my understanding and what there's lots of information out there. Anyone can go and read about this for ourselves. Okay, so estrogen is fluctuating wildly, okay? And then you've got progesterone, right? And so that starts to decline, and that starts to decline earlier on. You've got testosterone that gradually decreases as well. But if we talk about estrogen, estrogen is very protective for stress. It gives us that kind of that good feeling where we can deal and cope with life. It supports our vitality and energy. When that is fluctuating wildly, which it does in perimenopause, when alcohol comes on the scene as well, it creates more disruption in our system because we know that alcohol has an impact on our blood sugar,
Hmm.
right? If things aren't stable because of the fluctuations of estrogen, then we have got this opportunity for the mood changes to be even more amplified. Alcohol has a negative effect on hot flushes. If you're at that stage of perimenopause or early postmenopause where you're having hot flushes or flashes, whatever country you come from, depends on how we say it. Um, it can make them worse for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, so what else happens? So sleep is already disrupted in perimenopause, normally a little bit later on in perimenopause, but it's a very, very common symptom that women experience. So, you're waking up and can't get back to sleep. You've been woken up by this big surge of cortisol. You've got this massive kind of stress physiological dump in your body. This is all going on because of the shift of hormones in your system, right? If you add alcohol to that, we know that alcohol reduces the quality of our sleep. So
Mm.
you've got this double whammy happening, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
there's a lot happening in the body. And of course, if we talk about stress hormones, like I said, estrogen is very protective for stress. We've got that wild fluctuation happening in perimenopause, which lowers the protection for stress. So we're less resilient to stress. That's a very common thing that women experience. Then we've got, if we bring in alcohol, so it might lower stress. We have a glass of whatever, it might lower stress in the short term, but you've got that rebound effect of increased cortisol later. You add that to what's going on hormonally for your system, and it's a whole lot of a different ball game. It's much more difficult. And then the other piece is our beautiful liver that works so hard for us. It's working harder to work with the hormonal fluctuations in perimenopause. And a lot of women find that they might have been able to have, I keep going back to wine, but anyway, a glass of wine and feel okay. In perimenopause, they then often start to notice I can't handle the glass of wine that I used to. It
Mm.
feels that I feel really woozy very quickly.
Hmm.
My blood sugar goes up and down. I just don't feel okay. Well, there's a big interplay there with what's going on with your liver and the load that it's having to deal with. That makes things a whole lot more difficult. So, yeah, yeah. Have you noticed any of those? Not so much with alcohol, obviously, but those normal symptoms of perimenopause for yourself if you're at that stage of life.
Yeah, definitely. I and I know that because I would just before I answer that,
Mm.
what are the ages? And we haven't. I know we can sort of research this, but what just to let the listeners know, what are the rough ages? Because it's a real broad
Yeah.
range, isn't it? It's not like, oh, this is
Yeah.
going to happen in the next 5 years
Yeah.
from start to finish. Is it?
Well, it's normally sort of 10 years is deemed as the maximum. It's sort of between 4 and 10 years.
Okay.
But so the
For
average
the whole
age,
process? For the whole process? Or
yeah, supposedly,
okay.
yeah, but you talk to women and they'll tell you it might feel longer for many of them. Yeah, it sort of tapers in and builds and then tapers out again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Um,
know when I was drinking, I was definitely getting hot flushes. I couldn't, I'd wake up just pouring with sweat at night time
yeah.
and have those anxiety 3 a.m. wake up calls anyway. So yeah, sleep was just terrible, and I noticed definitely as soon as I quit the booze at I haven't really had that, so that's been
Yeah.
great. I'm definitely in the zone at the moment with peri or menopause or whatever I'm at, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely not as bad as I think it potentially could have been if I was still drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of women find that when they're experience those symptoms, and even with small amounts of alcohol, if they remove it or they lower it, but if they remove it entirely, a lot of those symptoms really settle down
Hmm.
or resolve for a good period of time. So I'll just clarify around perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Yeah. So perimenopause is that period of time that is before menopause, and menopause is deemed as being 12 months without your period. So you haven't had your period for 12 months. On that day, congratulations, you are in menopause, right? After that day, you are deemed as being postmenopausal.
Right.
And so the average age is 51 or 52 for that menopausal sort of cutoff age.
Hmm.
But and a lot of women come into perimenopause in their 40s, but there are some women that are beginning their perimenopausal journey early 40s, even earlier than that. And I know for myself, because I was very early to postmenopause, I was already experiencing symptoms in my late 30s, sort of
Right.
the hot flushes and the fatigue and the irritability. I didn't know it was perimenopause at the time, and that can be the case for a lot of women as well. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
is it is a significant period of our life. Not all women are sitting in it for, 10 years. That's not the same for everyone, but that is that sort of 4 to 10 year age, 4 to 10 year range of
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose if you were younger than what you were expected, I feel like we were all
Mm.
sort of told years ago that it wouldn't happen until at least your 50s, and
Yeah.
so if that's happening and you're in your 30s, yeah, I can understand how confusing that must be because
Yeah.
you wouldn't necessarily connect the dots that it was perimenopause, right?
No, yeah, exactly. No idea. And I think that's where this conversation that has become much bigger in the mainstream has been really helpful
Hmm.
because women are starting to understand. We're starting to understand, well, what are the symptoms of perimenopause? How do I know when I'm in it? There's no
Yeah.
test that tells us, so we have to rely on our physical symptoms that are showing up and
Yeah.
have an understanding of that. Yeah, so it can be very surprising. Luckily, I had a doctor that knew what was going on and was able to help me. But there were many years where I was just going through it going, what is going on with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, I mean, I know I've definitely developed a lot more self-awareness of myself and
Mm.
my body now that I don't drink. But back in the day when I was drinking all the time, um, just being that sort of dusty hungover, just not working at 100% capacity all the time, I don't think I would have been aware of
Yeah.
fluctuations throughout the month and stuff like that because I was just constantly hungover. So I think
Yeah.
that's probably another thing that if you're drinking regularly, then you might just not be quite as in tune with what's going on in
Mm.
your body as you would be if if you were sober, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I have seen for so many clients that alcohol, even in small amounts, really complicates the perimenopausal journey. And that's tough to face into,
Mm,
right? Because if alcohol has been that thing that we go out for a drink with our friends, we connect with people as something that relaxes us at the end of the day. Well, I'm feeling like absolute crap anyway, and now you're telling me I shouldn't be having this either?
yeah.
It makes it very difficult. So yeah, I'm all about educating and let's understand what's going on so that you can make some informed choices for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's kind of why I do what I do. It's not about telling everybody that they have to stop, like you don't have to
Yeah.
stop, but just make an informed decision. It's there's a lot of
Exactly.
misinformation out there about alcohol. And so it's, my job is to try and just educate people and just, yeah, get people to sort of understand a little bit better what's going on, and so that they can decide, well, I'm not happy with that, or all good, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's an individual choice, right?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that middle road. And we're not talking about, well, in terms of what I'm about to talk about now, I'm not so much talking about problematic use of alcohol. I'm talking about kind of that, every day it's okay, but now I'm feeling worse with it.
Mm,
And what I found when I was in late perimenopause, like and around that menopausal time, was I couldn't tolerate any alcohol. Like I just feel so bad an hour after having the drink.
mhm.
Worse the next day, like it would lower my energy incredibly the next day. I'm talking can't get up, have to have a nap, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now I'm many years out the other side. If you think about what's happening in my body now, I'm not having the massive rise and fall of estrogen. So my body's not having to kind of keep up with that. I'm not having the decline of progesterone because I'm on body identical HRT. Things are very steady, and HRT is not for everyone, but it has been really useful for me having gone through menopause early.
Hmm.
And so those things are steady in my life. In terms of how I manage with my blood sugar, it's much steadier now. And so if I do have a drink, the cost of that, the rebound negative effect of that is now far less.
Yeah.
So, what I say to women is like, pay attention to what's happening now and look after your body now. It's not a sentence for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
We've got to do what is right for our system now and support it to be as robust and resilient as it can be in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, we've obviously touched on the fact that hangovers tend to get worse, and the tolerance for alcohol seems to change.
Yeah.
I was gonna. There's also the talk about menopausal rage, or
Yeah.
heightened irritability. Um,
Yeah.
what? Yeah. What? I mean, what's been obviously with alcohol that won't be helping. So what's kind of the
No.
cause of that? Again, it's just hormonal shifts.
Yeah, it's the hormonal shifts and the I don't know the specifics and I don't know that it's really been researched, but it is a very common experience for women. And so, we have the softening effects of estrogen help us to be nurturing and kind and tending and befriending. That's nature, right? Nature is helping us be a good mother so that we're not abandoning our children, we're taking them with us, we're looking after them, all of that kind of stuff. As that starts to fluctuate and then decrease, it's more in the fluctuation stage of perimenopause, maybe early postmenopause. We're seeing the menopausal rage, the really heightened irritability. It's a very common experience that we go from 0 to 100 in terms of flying off the handle where we didn't before. So we can look at, the hormonal shifts, the lowering of progesterone, the fluctuation of estrogen. Our brain is physically changing in that time. If we sometimes, some people say, yeah, menopause is a bit of a second puberty. If we think back to when we were in puberty, I know for me, as those hormones were changing, I was very quick to fly off the handle. I did have a lot of anger as a teenager, a lot of emotional volatility. It's a similar kind of mirroring. Obviously, we're a mature woman by then, but it's a similar kind of shift that happens in menopause. For me, it was something that happened really early on when I didn't know that I was in perimenopause, and I think it's really good for women to be aware and to notice, oh, I just feel like I'm, like I said, going from 0 to 100 really, really quickly. Or you might find that for some women at certain times of their cycle, if you're still menstruating, you might find a few days before my period, I'm really rageful. Well, suddenly that starts to increase. That's getting worse, or it's hanging around for longer periods of time. And then as time goes on, oh, it's not even just before my period. It's happening. I don't know when it's happening. It's just happening whenever, out of thin air, and I don't understand and I can't track it. That's what happens in perimenopause.
Yeah, right.
Really good to talk to your helping professional, your naturopath or your doctor, who has an understanding about perimenopause, who can support you with that, because it does shift. It doesn't hang around. Yeah, I can tell you safely out the other side of many years, out the other side, postmenopausal, I'm much steadier in myself now than I used to be. And certainly than I was when I was in perimenopause, because your brain does go through a restructuring and a rewiring. And as you come out the other side, things start to steady. Your brain does become more resilient and stronger. That is post-menopausal, right? So something to look forward to. But I really want to normalize the menopausal rage, and I haven't looked at research, but I would definitely think that alcohol would amplify that, right?
Yeah.
Because it affects blood sugars, it affects hormonal levels, it affects cortisol. You've got that rebound effect happening after you drink of increased stress.
Yeah.
And so if your stress is increased, if your stress level is down here, say at 2 out of 10, but then your normal level is 5 out of 10, well, then of course you're going to be quicker to shift into that irritability or anger, or that volatility that happens. So really, first of all, normalizing it, but also that we can get support and help with it, because it is a stage that we're going through on the menopausal journey. It's not something that is necessarily going to stay with you forever.
Yeah, right. Okay. That should please some of the husbands and partners out there.
I
Yeah.
think that it's really important for the partners and the husbands and whoever our loved ones are in our life to have an understanding of the perimenopausal journey. It might just be one podcast that you ask them to listen to, that they can understand. Because of course, and we all know, and we all talk about it, in perimenopause, menopause, our sex drive shifts, libido shifts, our want to be affectionate and touching and be around the ones that we love. It goes through a massive change. I don't know if you've heard of women talking about, I cannot even stand the way he breathes, the way he eats. It sends me into a menopausal rage, right? It's not his fault. He's always eaten that way. He's always breathed that way. But suddenly we just cannot handle it, right? When the hormones are back in a and not in that fluctuating state, when things have shifted in the hormonal balance in the body, then that gets better. That we soften around that. We don't notice them eating so loudly anymore. It's sort of, I know it's something that is psychological, but it really comes from a physiological place. It's because of what's happening in the hormones within you. And so just to speak to that in terms of intimacy and sex drive and all of that kind of stuff, it causes a lot of friction in relationships, a massive amount. And so it's really important for there to be conversation around it and for us to talk about it, because it's very easy for the partner who's not going through menopause to think, well, if she doesn't want to be intimate with me, then it means she doesn't care about me, or she doesn't love me, she doesn't want to be around me. It's not about that, because there's a big shift happening for that woman. And so if the partner can understand that and best case scenario, not take it personally, find other ways to communicate and to be close and to be intimate. Again, just like the irritability, the sex drive can drop away and then it can stabilize and raise again, right? So whatever's going on for us, it's not the end of the story. Things will go through a cycle in perimenopause and we do come out the other side. Sometimes we need that support. I have found it really, HRT, really beneficial in my life. There are other ways to support our body as well. That was a bit of a tangent, but however.
No, but it's all important stuff. I know that for me
Yeah.
and my friends, when we talk, I don't have a partner anymore, but
Mhm.
so it's probably perfect time for me to be going through all of
Yeah.
this because I don't have somebody breathing heavily next to me, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But I know that talking to my friends, there are comparisons made between, our fluctuating throughout the month. I know, at the gym, there's certain times of the month where we can all lift really, really heavy. And then the next
Yeah.
week, we can't even lift half of that. And it's just so frustrating because you just kind of don't ever really feel like you're getting anywhere because it's like, oh, I could do that last week and now I can't. Whereas guys are just kind of cruising along,
Mm.
they're just on one level the whole time, the whole month. And so I guess there's a bit of frustration in that from a woman's perspective is that, like, yeah, just to be on an even keel from, the start of the month to the end of the month would just be amazing. I mean, think how much we
Yeah.
could accomplish, but
And that is it doesn't exactly correlate, but actually that is part of the promise of postmenopause. You are on an even keel for the entire month, and you don't have those fluctuations going on of a normal cycle, let alone perimenopause, right?
Mm.
And because in terms of estrogen, which is that caretaking hormone, that's lowered in your system, we're not being driven so much by our hormones to tend and befriend and nurture and caretake. It means on a developmental level that this stage of life that you're coming into, that I'm in that postmenopausal stage, is so much more about what's important for me, what brings me joy, what helps me engage in a sense of purpose. So it can
Mm.
be a very fulfilling stage of life. And just coming back to what you talked about, being on an even keel, that is one of the pluses, in my opinion, of being out the other side, is that I'm not subject to those cycles of of my hormones and my menstrual cycle. I'm just steady as I go for the most part, apart from all the stuff that happens in life, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
inside me, it's a lot more even and a lot more steady from day to day and week to week.
And that then means that you have the ability to deal with those things that do crop up because there's not that sort of as much of an overwhelm when shit does kick off, you can kind of
Yeah,
like, oh, you just sort of take it in your stride a little bit more, I guess. Yeah. I
yeah.
definitely find that with me with there's almost the same as me with my not drinking is that
Mm.
I'm just a lot more balanced throughout the day throughout, because I can take things that get thrown at me and I'm just kind of like, meh, it's just part of life. Whereas back when I was drinking, any minor inconvenience and I would have been reaching for a bottle. So, it's
Yeah, exactly. You
yeah.
can really see how one mirrors the other in terms of what's going on in the system. Yeah. So as an example, I've talked to some women about how they respond to stress. And so a friend was saying to me, yeah, my adult child came to me and something big was going on in her life. And previously, I've been able to be there for her, help her sort through it, and then just sort of feel in my heart, that's life, that's a part of growing up, she's going to be okay. And my friend said, but right now, at the moment, I cannot deal with it. I can't cope with it. It's consuming me. I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm really worrying about it. I actually feel really anxious about it. And I'm not an anxious person. This is what this person was saying. And then this was at a menopause presentation. And then later she said, I get it now. I understand why I've responded so anxiously to this life event where previously I would have been okay with it
Mm,
because she was going through the later stages of perimenopause.
right.
So already she had more anxiety and more worry and more stress in her system. Her resilience to stress was lowered. She was more exposed to the effects of stress.
Yeah.
And so, really important to understand that. Sometimes we need to get support for that, and sometimes just knowing that is
Yeah.
helpful. And we
Yeah.
can sort of talk to ourselves about it and understand, okay, perimenopause is really making this a lot harder. I can actually give myself some nurturing and some care and some compassion to help me move through this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, what have you, in the women that you've worked with,
Mm,
women that have decided to either reduce or remove alcohol, what
yeah.
kind of transformations have you seen with those women?
Yeah. Um, Wonderful, great, amazing transformations.
Yeah.
Um, so, as an example, um, a friend very similar age, she decided that it was time for her to actually let go of alcohol completely. And so, what she now feels is so much steadier and more even. She's not having to recalibrate after a night of just a few drinks, right? It's not nothing too intense was going on.
Hmm.
She feels more energy within herself. She feels more emotionally settled and stable. So there's no doubt for women that when we're not consuming alcohol or we're reducing it, there are massive benefits to our health because our health and our mental well-being, our physical health, sorry, and our mental well-being go hand in hand, right? Of course, we know about the correlation between increased anxiety after alcohol's consumed. That is much more inflamed, inflamed in perimenopause. And so for the women I've seen that have either paused with alcohol, so maybe they've stopped for a month, you have those periods of time, they just say to me, look, I just feel more energized, more able to do the things I want to do, more willing to look after my body in physical ways. I feel more steady within myself, within my mind, my emotions, my psychology. There's massive benefits that
Yeah.
I see anyway, that are reported to me from
Yeah.
women.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely, I see that too. Just obviously not from my focus isn't sort of perimenopausal, but
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely see just more zest for life, really. I think just
Yeah, it's
and
a good
just
way to sum it
knowing,
up.
yeah, and just that sort of ability to just handle life and just to enjoy it more and just to realize that what I think the really cool thing that I see with my coaching is just that the majority of people when they first come to me is they all say without fail, I just want to be able to moderate or I just want to be able to
Mm.
drink in special occasions or
Hmm.
and that's cool, but I feel the people that are coming to me, if they could do that they would have done that already, and I think that they're sort of moderation isn't for everybody. If you could moderate,
Yeah.
you'd be doing it, right? So it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't anything that I could do.
For you. Yeah.
But there's just that realization sort of a few sessions in where, or even sooner sometimes, that where they just realize that the positives are way outweighing the negatives. Yeah,
Yeah.
of just for not drinking anymore. That sober is boring and all that kind of stuff. But I have so much more time now to do other things, just all of a sudden when you're not recovering or thinking about drinking or
Yeah.
drinking, you've just got so much more time on your hands, you've got more money, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I can't
Yeah.
speak highly of it, but I'm a little bit biased, but yeah, it's really cool to see when people actually realize that it's not the be all and end all it's been made out to be.
I agree. It is really, really cool to see. And I was thinking as I was speaking that it is difficult for women to begin, you're right, to moderate, because as soon as you have one drink, inhibitions are down, you have another one, right?
Mm,
That's what alcohol does to us.
mm,
And so I guess, connecting in with you is a good way for women to begin that journey
mm,
because there has to be a reason for us to create change in our life.
yeah.
When something has been so conditioned into us as being part of our normal way of being, it is difficult to make that big change. So we need to understand why we're doing it, and there are ways to find support to create that change. And I think that's, why you're doing such a fabulous job out there in our community.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
it's really cool to see. I know, like most people that come to me, they're still drinking, and their first question
Hmm.
is, "Do I have to quit today?" And I'm like, "No, no, not at all. You don't have to quit at
Yeah,
all if you don't want to. It's
yeah,
just about kind of empowering you to make informed choices, what we were saying before. But
yeah.
everybody that I've worked with so far hasn't gone back to drinking. So, like there has been that
Wow.
shift and it's been really, like it's so cool to see because it makes my heart happy. There's,
Yeah,
a few less drinkers out there,
yeah,
but yeah, it's definitely that there's a lot of shame involved and a lot of stigma around not
yeah,
drinking, it's not as bad as it used to be, but there's definitely a lot of, people, oh, why aren't you drinking? A lot of people just don't want to deal with those kind of questions, so they carry on drinking, and
It
it's
is it is
yeah.
challenging, yeah.
Mm,
And for me, coming from a very typical Kiwi family, it's like, oh, why aren't you drinking? It's Christmas time. Why aren't you having a drink? Oh,
yeah,
have a glass of wine. It's all of that.
yeah,
And because at the time when I was much younger, because I was unwell, it was easy to say, well, I'm sick. I'm not going to drink, right? It just was my body just could not handle it.
yeah,
But when we're making that conscious choice that's not been driven by chronic illness, for example, then the stigma is still there.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thankfully, I don't know if you see this, but I think things are changing. I see it with young people. There's less stigma around not drinking.
Yeah.
My hope is that it's changing.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's definitely changing. I know when I was trying to quit, I was in small town New Zealand, and everybody drank, and so I was the absolute weirdo for not.
Yeah.
Why are you? What's wrong with you? And it gets quite tiresome having to answer questions.
Yeah.
These days when you say I don't drink, even somebody who's got is talking to you with a glass of wine in their hand, there's almost that little bit of respect that you've chosen not to drink, and it's like, oh,
Mm.
it's the responses come from a place of interest more than pestering you to have a drink,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah,
the,
yeah.
you're the weird one. It's kind of like, oh, good for you, so that's really cool, and that can kind of
Nice.
make it a lot more accessible to people that are thinking about it. The stigma is kind of lessening, but there's still a long way to go. Definitely in New
Yes,
Zealand and
still
in the
a long
UK.
way to
So,
go. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
True, true.
What would you give? So, if there's somebody who's listening to this and they're in that sort of
Mm.
perimenopausal stage of life, and they're sober curious, but they don't know where to start. I mean, what's your advice for somebody that's listening in?
Listen to your podcast.
Yay, thank you.
Seriously, right? Listen, talk to somebody who has maybe gone through the experience themselves,
Yeah.
and maybe they're curious about moderating or, not drinking at all. Um, get some information flowing to you that is different to what you've witnessed before. So that
Mm,
might be listening to your podcast, um, following you on social media, having a better understanding of it. Because when you sort of not fill your life, but include more of that in your life, then your brain starts to switch on to that as
yeah.
a way of being. And then the next small step will start to emerge. You'll pick up some information about it. It will it opens our mind to the possibility of, oh, this person's doing that and they feel really good in their lives. Oh, this woman did that and I can relate to her.
Mm.
And now she's telling me that she's got so much more energy for the sport or the activity that she loves. Yeah, so sort of we can't always surround ourselves physically with people that have gone down that journey, but we can certainly do that with podcasts, with social media. For all its negative stuff, there's some really good information out there,
Yeah.
good senses of community and connections that we can make, and we can do that through those avenues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. I know that when I was starting out, again, going back to where I was, small town New Zealand,
Yeah.
I didn't have any support, like real life support.
Mm,
And so I
mm.
leaned on the online sober community really heavily. And it's just amazing because there's just support from all over the place, all over the world.
Yeah.
You could be having a really shit time and you put a post up on Facebook saying help, or I
Yeah.
need some help or I need some support, and
Yeah.
somebody in the world will message you and say you're okay, or
Wow.
I've got you, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it's just so supportive. I really really found that that was very very helpful and really relatable to realize that actually you're not the only person going through
Yeah.
this. There's millions
Yeah.
of people struggling with this, and there's lots and lots of places for help, nowadays.
And that's where social media, we can extract the good out of it and
Hmm.
the community aspects out of it. I see it in the menopausal groups where women, they might post and they might post anonymously and say, look, I've just had a really shit day. I flew off the handle at my partner. I cried at work. I just feel so embarrassed. And you just have this stream of comments saying, hey, I know what it felt like when I went through that. Yep, I
Yeah,
was there today. And just that experience of being heard
yeah,
and feeling connected
yeah.
is just
and
so
and not
incredibly
and not being
empowering.
judged as well. I think
Not
that's
being
huge. Yeah,
judged.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's cool.
massive.
What's the biggest myth do you think about alcohol and menopause that people believe?
Myth.
I mean, it's
Don't
probably that
know.
alcohol de-stresses you, I guess, is probably one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like it's kind of that myth that runs through with alcohol that alcohol de-stresses you and relaxes you. Well, yes, it might for a short amount of time, but then you have a massive rebound
yeah,
of cortisol and stress response in your body, liver load, all the rest of it, when you've got the fluctuations of perimenopause going on, then it makes it so much worse.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd say that would be it. I do sometimes see women trying to really tough it out in that I've always had a couple of glasses of wine with dinner. That has been my life, and I will continue to do that. I don't care if I'm going through perimenopause, right? And so they for whatever reason we stay with the status quo. They stick very firmly and are very attached to that. Um, that I kind of see and go, oh, maybe if you could loosen up around that and just maybe try something different.
with
Um,
dogged
I d-
determination.
I don't think you understand how good you could feel or how much better you could feel.
Yeah,
That sort of rigidity, and as we get older, it's very easy to stay in our lane and to not change because that's the way I've always done it.
yeah,
But perimenopause, because it shakes everything up in our system, is an incredible time to do new things and try new things. Hard if we're feeling really bad, but it is an amazing time to introduce new possibilities and new horizons in your life. And it's actually really important because as we age, it's very easy for our life to get smaller and smaller, our connections to get less and less.
yeah.
And so we sort of need to make these conscious moves to create change, to create new connections, to step outside our comfort zone. I often try and do something new that's mildly worrying making, in a social context. I'm not jumping off buildings, terrified of heights, but in a social context, I try and do something new that sort of expands me, that I might feel a little bit nervous about the first time, but that I just try it out.
Yeah.
And I encourage my clients to do that if they're in a reasonably good place within themselves, to keep doing that in that menopausal stage, because it helps our lives to become richer and fuller as we continue through life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Finally, what's one takeaway that you would hope that the listeners would take away from this conversation today?
What's one takeaway? I would love listeners to, keep an open mind about their relationship with alcohol. And just like a relationship with a toxic friend, right? You might get to a stage where you're like, I don't think I want to talk with you every day, because it actually really bums me out and brings me down. And then I don't feel so good within myself. Well, just can we be a little open about our relationship with alcohol? Is there some dysfunction there? Is alcohol being my toxic friend, and it's making me feel a little bit more shit than I need to feel? And do we need to take a break? Do I need to not talk to you every day, or but consume you every day? Do we need to end our friendship? Just
Yeah.
to like really open up and question our relationship with these things in our life. And today we're talking about alcohol, but to question that would be my takeaway. And if the question, when you open up to it, you're like, yeah, you know what, I don't really like what's going on here now that I understand it better, then getting some more support on board to increase your understanding. And when you have more support, it's much easier to make change.
Yeah.
It's harder to make change in isolation. And that would be another takeaway, is that there is support there for you, in community, through the lens of social media, and also in the community around you, and to reach out to that support and open up those conversations. Talk with your friends who
Mm.
are at the same age and stage of life. What's it like for you now? Do you ever think about your relationship with alcohol? Do we, and not from a judging place, of course, but from a place of really curiosity
Yeah.
for yourself and your friends.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, curiosity is key, right? It's definitely opens the door to so many possibilities.
It
So,
does, and it's
yeah.
it's not judging, it's open, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna learn about this, and see how it sits within me, and maybe I'll make a change, maybe I won't, but I'm open and I'm curious. I think that's a really healthy way to be.
Yeah, awesome, Megan. How can people find you?
Yeah, cool. So they can find me on Instagram. I'm at Meegan Cares. I assume you'll put links
Yes, I will. I'll put them all on the show
in
notes.
the
Yeah.
show notes.
Yeah.
And then I have have an offer for people that's a free offer, and it's a workshop, a webinar, and it goes through perimenopause, menopause, what's happening in our mind, what's happening in our body, what can we do about it, how can we support ourselves. And that's on my website at meegancare.co.nz/mindful web. But that'll be in the show notes as well. And
Yeah.
and women have said to me, look, especially the ones that are new coming into perimenopause, maybe they're around that age, late 30s, early 40s, and they don't know a lot about it. They're like, oh, now I get it now. I understand the context. I can see the change that my body is coming into,
Yeah.
and I can see, because sometimes there's so many symptoms that arise that we don't know are to do with perimenopause, right?
Mm.
But once you do understand that, it's so empowering. And so when they run through that workshop, there's a much better understanding of this stage of life, which helps us to relax a little more around it.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this. I think it's been really cool. It's really, really informative for me as well, obviously going through it
Mm.
myself. But yeah, I hope the listeners have enjoyed my chat with Megan. I would definitely put all your notes on the show notes for the contact details and that promotion for that webinar. But yeah, thank you so much. Guys, thank you for listening. Also, if you are sober curious, I have just created an ebook which you can download, which is just kind of exploring, gives you some reflection prompts, just to sort of question a few different aspects of your relationship with alcohol. So if you guys are wanting to download that, you can find that. There's a link in my bio, so at levelup_sobriety on Instagram. But yeah, thank you so much, Megan. I will
Amazing.
be back with another episode next week. But until then, have a great week. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.